Let's talk about Iran, its nuclear program, and why it's back in the news.
With the region on edge and Tehran closer than ever to a nuclear weapon.
High-stakes nuclear talks
between the U.S. and Iran.
It's all happening after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Iran to make a deal or face war.
Did you mean military action, though, if they don't agree?
Oh, if necessary? Absolutely, yeah.
So what does each side want from these talks? Why are they happening now? And how close is Iran to getting a nuclear weapon? Let's start with that last one. Iran's had a nuclear program for about 50 years, but has always insisted it's only for peaceful civilian use, i.e. for things like nuclear energy. In fact, Iran's supreme leader has said pursuing a nuclear weapon goes against Islamic rules.
هم ساختنش غلطه، هم نگه داشتنش غلطه، چون به کار بردنش حرامه.
But since the early 2000s, Iran has been accused of secretly trying to develop nuclear weapons. And in the following years, the UN, the US, and others targeted Iran with all sorts of sanctions, which devastated Iran's economy.
It's a total disaster. It can't be described by words. We've got nothing left.
Then, in 2015, back when Barack Obama was president, Iran signed a deal with 6 world powers, including the US, to limit its nuclear program. The EU was also involved. This is the deal's official name, but it's usually just known by its acronym, the JCPOA. In it, Iran agreed not to seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons, and to allow investigators to monitor its nuclear activities. In return, UN sanctions on Iran would be lifted. For the next couple of years, the deal broadly worked, but it had some big critics, including Donald Trump.
The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into.
So he ended U.S. participation and reimposed sanctions. Basically, the U.S. broke the deal, and that pretty much killed it, although technically all the other countries are still signed up. Soon, Iran was ramping up its nuclear program again. It started making it harder for investigators to monitor nuclear sites. And last year, the world's nuclear watchdog said Iran has been dramatically accelerating uranium enrichment.
Strengthening of their capacities is underway.
To get weapons-grade uranium, which you need to make a nuclear bomb, you've got to get to 90% enrichment of the uranium. Now, Iran's got to 60% right now. That seems like there's quite a little bit of a gap there. Actually, there's not. It's a terribly small technical step, I'm told, to get from 60 to 90%. Iran is very, very close, and the experts think they could, if they wanted, do it in just over a week or so.
Now that would be a major step. But Iran would still have to build an actual weapon to carry a nuclear device. And there are various estimates about how long that could take, from a few months to a couple of years. That said, a recent U.S. intelligence report concluded that currently Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and that would need a political decision from Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei, who has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program, though pressure is probably built on him to do so.
Well, the Iranians still contend that their nuclear program is purely for peaceful purposes. But there are increasingly loud and louder voices in Tehran talking about the fact that they have to consider weaponizing their nuclear program.
It is no secret that we have become a nuclear threshold state, and this is a reality. It is also no secret that we have the technical capabilities required to manufacture a nuclear bomb.
Okay, so here's what's going on now. The latest U.S.-Iran talks started in mid-April. The U.S. side is led by Steve Witkoff. He's a former real estate developer and a close friend of Trump. The Iranian side is led by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. He was also involved in the JCPOA negotiations. The Gulf state of Oman is mediating.
But in between the high-level meetings, then the technical negotiations. And these are very detailed subjects. You're not just talking about high-level diplomacy, you're talking about nuclear physics.
But what explains all the momentum we're seeing at the moment? And who wants what? Well, first, look at the current backdrop in the Middle East. We've seen some big shifts in the balance of power in the last year or so since Israel's war on Gaza. We've seen Israel, a major U.S. ally, go after Hezbollah, a major Iranian ally in Lebanon. We've even seen direct attacks by Israel and Iran on each other for the first time ever. Some analysts think all this has left Iran in a weaker position and more keen to strike a deal.
Iran wants the threat of war lifted.
The military threat against their nuclear program and against their country is now much more palpable and credible than it has been in years.
Remember, Iran is also struggling with the impact of sanctions, especially the ones which were imposed by the US when it pulled out of the JCPOA. Iran's economy is in really bad shape.
They're literally struggling to keep the lights on. There are frequent blackouts in Iran.
Okay, so what about the US side? Donald Trump was the person who backed out of or ripped up the previous nuclear deal with Iran. Why is he so keen on getting this done in this second term?
I think one of the things you have to do is listen to exactly what President Trump said. And I may be picking up on what seems like a small detail, but repeatedly, numerous times, the president has said he wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think he feels that this is a place that he can do that.
It also looks like Trump may have softened his demands. When he pulled out of the JCPOA, Trump's position was that Iran shouldn't be allowed to have a nuclear program at all, not even for civilian use. But that may have changed.
The Trump administration this time around has taken the same position on that as the Obama administration. The negotiations with Mr. Witkoff, it seems, and we're not in the room, but it seems right now that they are saying to Iran, yes, you can continue with a nuclear program, but capped at a certain level of enrichment.
There's something else hanging over all of this, which could also explain Trump's apparent urgency to strike a deal now. A crucial part of the JCPOA expires later this year, in October. It's called the snapback mechanism. Basically, any of the 5 countries that are still signed up to the deal can call on the UN to reimpose or snap back all the old UN sanctions if they think Iran is not complying with the limits on its nuclear program. It's kind of like the last remaining bit of leverage they have over Iran. That's how the UK, France, and Germany see it anyway. And they've said they are willing to trigger the snapback to stop Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
In the US, even though they can't do it themselves, they can call on their friends, they have in this negotiations, which is one of the reasons why Donald Trump wants to get this moving as fast as possible, because he's going to reach a point where he won't have that snapback, that extra pressure on Iran.
So what are the chances of the US and Iran actually getting a deal? Well, it's probably going to be a long and drawn-out process. These are tense negotiations that could easily collapse at any moment. Keep in mind, there's also pressure on the US side from Israel, which says that even a civilian nuclear program in Iran is a security threat.
I think one thing we have to say, though, every time we mention Israel, is Israel has a nuclear weapon. Israel is not signed up to any of the international conventions. Israel doesn't let IAEA, that's the UN body that covers these things, it doesn't let them look at its nuclear program and its nuclear weapons. It doesn't admit it has a nuclear weapon, but everyone knows that it does.
For now, though, it looks like both Iran and the US are pretty keen to make some kind of progress toward a deal. The fact that they're actually talking is more than we've seen for the last few years.
I think it is more likely that they would reach some kind of an interim agreement, not a full deal, but a partial agreement that would freeze or roll back some elements of Iran's nuclear program for some partial sanctions relief. And by pursuing this kind of arrangement, both sides would be able to buy time and space for diplomacy and to negotiate a more durable solution.